Hi, this is Mike Webb. I'm the Director of Quality Schools at Delaware County Intermediate Unit. Over the summer, we have had some updates to the Educator Effectiveness system in Pennsylvania, and I'd like to take about 30 minutes to give you an overview of what those updates are. Many of these updates are in effect for 2014-15, so time is of the essence, and we'll move right into the presentation now.
So, why is there a need for an educator effectiveness update at this point? Well, in June 2014, regulations for principal effectiveness and non-teaching professional effectiveness were formalized in the Pennsylvania Bulletin, followed by the Educator Effectiveness Administrative Manual being updated in July of 2014. As part of that update, regulations pertaining to teacher-specific data were clarified. Again, those two things happening in July of 2014. Reviewing general timelines, teacher effectiveness components are still the same. Principal effectiveness components are still the same, likewise for non-teaching professional effectiveness components. There are some slight changes with timelines for teacher effectiveness components. So, the observation and practice ratings rooted in Charlotte Danielson's Framework for Teaching, those have been in effect since 2013-14 and beyond. Building level data, which we know as the school performance profile, are in effect for the evaluation year 2013-14. We will not have full data about each building level score until the fall of 2014, so that's why you see 2013-14 evaluation year and beyond for building level data. Student learning objectives, this is the elective data portion, which is 20% of teacher effectiveness. SLOs are in effect for 2014-15. This will be the pilot year for student learning objectives. And teacher-specific data, which is the final portion of teacher effectiveness, the PVAS component, which is what we have heard the most about up to this point, will still not be available until evaluation year 2015-16, but the other components of teacher-specific data, which we will get to in a moment, are in effect for 2014-15. Moving on to principal effectiveness, the observation and practice rating rooted in PDE's Framework for Leadership is in effect for 2014-15 and beyond. Correlation data, which will be presented a bit later, is in effect for 2014-15 and beyond. And finally, principal student learning objectives, principal SLOs, they are optional for 2014-15, but will be in effect in 2015-16 and beyond. Finally, non-teaching professional effectiveness components, the observation and practice rating, which is rooted in specific rubrics aligned to the roles of non-teaching professionals. Those are now in effect in 2014-15, and the 20% student performance data, which is the other component of the non-teaching professional effectiveness rating system, that is in effect for 2014-15 evaluation year. Much like the building level data from teacher effectiveness, that data will be available in the fall of next year. Before we move on, the reference material that we are talking about in this presentation today is presented here. There are four source documents that I would point you to as we discuss the different components of educator effectiveness. The first is the Educator Effectiveness Administrative Manual found on PDE's website. Second, the PA Bulletin Rules and Regulations, both from June 2013 and June 2014. You'll see a lot of conversion tables in there that are necessary for the calculations that go into teacher ratings in particular. The Teacher Effectiveness Student Performance Data FAQ, which was released over the summer, also available on PDE's website, and Act 82, which contains the original language governing everything that is educator effectiveness. If you are looking at the PowerPoint version of this, you will be able to click on those links and go to the websites where you can find those documents. So regarding these clarifications within educator effectiveness, we have some new keywords, particularly regarding teacher-specific data. And those words are available and applicable. LEAs, when considering these clarifications, need to keep in mind the availability and applicability of teacher-specific data elements. The recommendation, of course, is to work closely with your bargaining unit and your solicitor in determining which teacher-specific data elements apply, are available, and who they apply to and when. So, teacher-specific data. What is it? Formerly, this was addressed in the teacher-specific data 15% of a teacher's annual rating as the teacher PVAS measure. But in Act 82, there are actually 4 elements of teacher-specific data, and what you see in front of you now is straight from Act 82, from Section 1123 about the rating system. 15% of teacher-specific data includes those following 4 components. 1, student performance on assessments. 2, value-added assessment system data, that is teacher PVAS data. 3, progress in meeting the goals of student IEPs. And 4, locally developed school district rubrics. What I will go into next is an overview of what each of those are based on available data we have at this time. What you see now is the most recent version of the teacher effectiveness pie chart. It should look very familiar to you. Almost all of it is exactly what you have been used to. In purple, the observation and practice rating rooted in Danielson. In blue, the building level data, that is the school performance profile. In green, the elective data, which we know as the student learning objective SLO process. And then teacher-specific data, which has been clarified, as I've mentioned, with those 4 elements that make up teacher-specific data: student performance on assessments, teacher PVAS, IEP goals progress, and locally developed rubrics, or LDRs. What I will do now is look at each of those teacher-specific data elements individually. First, student performance on assessments. This particular element is based on the percentage of students in a teacher's area of instructional responsibility who score proficient or advanced on state standardized assessments, so meaning PSSAs or Keystone exams. This particular portion cannot count for more than 5% of teacher-specific data. So that is 5% of that 15%, meaning 1/3. It cannot count for more than 1/3 of teacher-specific data. In order to look at what that percentage of students scoring proficient or advanced would look like on a 0 to 3 rating scale, you must use Table H, which is from the PA Bulletin from June 2013. Use that Table H conversion scale to look at the percentage students proficient or advanced and convert that to a 0 to 3 rating scale, which will be used as part of the teacher's teacher-specific data rating. Second, and this is perhaps the portion we are most familiar with, value-added assessment system data. This is the 3-year trend data rooted in PVAS, looking at teacher impact on student growth, again, for eligible teachers. If a teacher is not eligible for a PVAS rating, then this portion of teacher-specific data will not apply. Once again, this portion of teacher-specific data will not be available until the 3rd year of that trend data collection, which won't happen until evaluation year 2015-16. Year 1 of data collection was 13-14, Year 2, 14-15, Year 3, 15-16. So that data will not be available until 2015-16, the evaluation for that year. The next part that is some new information regarding teacher PVAS is that teacher PVAS cannot count for less than 10% of that teacher-specific data piece of the pie. So once again, that means it cannot count for less than 2/3 of teacher-specific data. Of course, that does not apply to teachers without a PVAS score. This only applies to teachers with a PVAS score. Cannot count for less than 10%. And then finally, Table I, also from the PA Bulletin, looks at converting that teacher's PVAS score into a 0 to 3 rating. One other note about value-added assessment system data. This also from the PA Bulletin, just to make sure you're aware, for teachers who don't have PVAS data, those other elements of teacher-specific data should be used to determine that teacher's teacher-specific data rating for that year. The third element of teacher-specific data is progress in meeting the goals of student individualized education plans, in meeting the goals of student IEPs. We have very few details on this particular element at this time. At the end of August 2014, some examples that will include this particular measure will be developed through PDE and presented as possible examples of how this could be put into practice. What we can say is that the SLO process must be used for the determination of this particular data element. Secondly, this particular portion of teacher-specific data cannot count for more than 5%. Once again, that refers to 1/3 of teacher-specific data. So progress in meeting IEP goals cannot count for more than 1/3 of a teacher's teacher-specific data rating. Next, what you see there from the FAQ is a note that any measure based upon progress made in meeting students' IEPs may be developed by the local LEA. Again, per an LEA decision as to what that would look like, but it must be validated through the SLO process. Furthermore, you'll see some highlighted language there from the FAQ. Just as an example, teachers may use aggregated caseload data of the percentage of students meeting IEP goals through progress monitoring. Again, this is not a requirement, simply an example of what could be possible. And lastly, somewhat of an obvious statement, but as per IDEA, it is expected that if progress monitoring data indicates that a student isn't making progress, then the IEP team needs to reconvene to make adjustments to the IEP program. That would not affect the teacher's rating because the teacher is doing exactly what should happen in that case. So that would not impact the teacher's rating because the IEP meeting reconvened in order to make adjustments. That's exactly what should happen. The final component of teacher-specific data is the locally developed school district rubric, known as an acronym LDR. Once again, much like with the IEP portion, you must use the SLO process to determine this portion of teacher-specific data. Two points about the percentages. If you are talking about a teacher who does have a PVAS score, the LDR portion cannot count for more than 5% of teacher-specific data. Once again, that refers to 1/3 of teacher-specific data, because the other 2/3 would be PVAS data. Alternatively, for teachers without PVAS data, the LDR could not count for more than 15% of teacher-specific data, which would mean the entire portion of teacher-specific data. It is possible to use the LDR measure for a teacher without PVUS data to be the entire teacher-specific data rating. From the PA Bulletin, you'll notice below there that an LEA may select a measure available relating to elective data. That's referring to the elective portion, what we call SLOs. An LEA shall utilize an SLO of the section to measure and validate that school district rubric. So you can use those things listed under elective data in reference to SLOs, those items listed as possible examples of what an SLO would look like as something to meet the LDR requirement. Moving on about LDRs, because the LDR is not specifically defined in Act 82, the LEA may choose to utilize one of those SLO elective data measures. It is recommended that if an LEA chooses to do that, that the teacher also have an additional and separate elective data measure for the elective data portion. So you would have one thing that would be taken from the list of possible elective data measures that would be used as an LDR, and another that would be used as the SLO, but both would follow the SLO process. The second point there follows the first one, that while that recommendation is given to have two distinct measures, it is possible that an LEA and classroom teacher may agree to use a single elective data measure to comprise the 15% teacher-specific data and the 20% elective score, which would account for 35% of the educator's evaluation. However, they are two distinct measures, one teacher-specific data and one elective data. That would require having that particular elective data measure meet all the requirements of teacher-specific data, referring to meeting the goals of students with IEPs, also with the LDR, and then also with student performance on assessments, again, if all of those things are applicable. Finally, some general advice regarding locally developed school district rubrics, that the LEA should definitely consult with its solicitor regarding any agreement between the LEA and teachers about using elective data for both the elective data portion and the LDR teacher-specific data portion of a teacher's rating. And finally, who decides the proportion and weights of teacher-specific data elements? You'll notice here from the FAQ, the LEA does determine which data elements will be used, and once again, those key words, the LEA determines this based upon the availability of the data and the applicability of the data to the individual classroom teacher. The LEA also has the capability to determine the final weight of each of those data elements to applicable teacher-specific data components. Obviously, data components that are not applicable, a teacher who does not get a PVUS score, not only is PVUS data not available for that teacher, but it would also not be applicable. That concludes the presentation on teacher-specific data, and we will now move to principal effectiveness. Principal effectiveness is officially in effect for 2014-15, and you'll see here the principal effectiveness pie chart, which looks largely the same as it has in the past. Once again, in purple, observation and evidence based on the framework for leadership. Blue, building level data, that is the school performance profile. green elective data, which is principal student learning objectives. You'll notice some familiar terminology there listed under SLOs, which will be addressed in just a minute. And in red, some slight variation there, the correlation data based on teacher level measures. We have some more explanation as to what that correlation looks like, and in the next few slides I'll give you a brief overview of what both the correlation data and principal SLOs will look like. DCIU will be offering trainings specific to principal effectiveness regarding both the framework for leadership and the data measures that are now available. Once again, as a reminder, the correlation data is in effect for 2014-15, but principal SLOs are not in effect until 2015-16. Principal SLOs are optional in 2014-15. So, correlation data. In the past, we've seen this referred to as correlation to teacher PVAS. Once again, teacher PVAS, that teacher-specific data element, is a bit larger than that. And so the correlation data for principal effectiveness is a bit larger as well. You'll notice there from the PA Bulletin, correlation based on teacher-level measures includes any combination of one or more of the following data elements. And those data elements are the building level data in the form of the school performance profile, teacher-specific data, which you have just seen the 4 different elements that comprise teacher-specific data, and finally elective data, which is the student learning objective process at the teacher level. So what exactly does correlation data do? Correlation data explores the relationship between 2 different data sets. The first one is the principles, observation, and practice ratings for teachers, the purple side. So how the principal rates teachers through observation and practice ratings. The relationship portion comes in with looking at those observation and practice ratings as compared to the chosen teacher level measures. That can be a combination of building level data, teacher-specific data, or elective data, or it could be just one of those. You'll see on the next slide there's a table that is used to look at the principal's understanding of that relationship. That table is from the PA Bulletin. So while this is somewhat difficult to see in the slide, you'll see on the left there is an explanation. So the correlation rating is based on three different elements focused on the principal. So 1 is the principal's degree of understanding of the relationship between those teacher level data measures and his or her observation and practice ratings. Second is the quality of the principal's explanation provided for the observed relationship between those teacher level measures and the observation and practice ratings. And third are the plans that the principal has on how to use the data to support school and or LEA goals. Moving on to student learning objectives for principals, what you see here is the principal SLO template. We won't spend too much time on this particular template because if you are familiar with the teacher SLO process, it will look very familiar, although it is obviously aligned to the evaluation of a principal rather than a teacher. Moving on to training components, there are 2 elements to training that DCIU will be providing. Training on the framework for leadership. If you have not been part of the principal effectiveness project thus far, you may participate in the framework for leadership orientation. And secondly, would be a distinct training just about the data elements, and that would be the correlation data and student learning objective, principal SLOs that is, those two data elements pertaining to principals. Those sessions will begin in the fall. We will have multiple sessions. If you have already participated in principal effectiveness, you do not need to attend that framework for leadership training again. One thing we do want to point out is PDE has made it clear that both of those trainings will now be eligible for 30 PIL hours. We are just awaiting the job embedded assignments that go with each of those courses. And so once you take those courses, there will be job embedded assignments that must be completed. Once those are completed, then you will be eligible to receive 30 PIL hours for each of those trainings. That concludes all of our information about principal effectiveness at this time. Once again, as a reminder, DCIU will be offering very specific information about principal effectiveness in separate trainings. Moving on now to non-teaching professional effectiveness. Non-teaching professionals used to be referred to as the general term specialists, but it's been somewhat broadened with the term non-teaching professionals, which we'll get into in just a moment. But what you see in front of you is the rating system, the pie chart, for non-teaching professionals. It's an 80-20 split, 80% rooted in observation and evidence, 20% based on student performance, and that student performance is, once again, as we know, the school performance profile. For non-teaching professionals, much like teachers or administrators, if that student performance, the SPP score, if that non-teaching professional goes between buildings and has responsibility, say, equally among 3 buildings, the appropriate student performance measure would be to look at a combination of those ratings, an average of those 3 SPP scores. Again, that's an LEA decision as to how that student performance measure looks, but multiple building scores would be possible to go into that 20% student performance data. So, who are non-teaching professionals? Non-teaching professionals are comprised of 3 different varieties of roles. One are the certification and staffing policy guidelines defined specialists, dental hygienists all the way through school psychologists, as you see there. Those are specialists defined in regulation. Second, supervisors, also defined in the CSPGs, supervisors who are not principals but supervisors, curriculum instruction, special education, pupil services, etc. That's the second category of non-teaching professionals. The third category is somewhat more ambiguous because it varies so much from LEA to LEA. So the third category are those individuals who are instructionally certified but provide no direct instruction. ICNDI, another new acronym. So the question surrounding who is instructionally certified but providing no direct instruction has a 2-pronged test, which you may have seen already. And if an individual can answer yes to each of those questions, then you would be a classroom teacher. If you answer no to even one of those, then you are more likely a non-teaching professional. Question 1, are you working under your instructional certification? Number 2, do you provide direct instruction to students in a particular subject or grade level, with direct instruction being defined as planning and providing instruction and assessing that instruction. So an example could be an instructional coach. In some LEAs, an instructional coach may have no direct teaching duties whatsoever, and that coach works only with other teachers. In that case, they would be working under some kind of instructional certificate, but providing no direct instruction to students, which would classify them as instructionally certified, but providing no direct instruction, and therefore a non-teaching professional. Alternatively, an instructional coach could have some direct teaching responsibilities, as well as providing coaching for teachers. If that were the case, then the answer to questions 1 and 2 would both be yes. Even if it is direct instruction provided to just a small group of students, the answer is still yes, and therefore that individual will be classified as a classroom teacher and subject to the teacher effectiveness rating chart, not the non-teaching professional effectiveness rating chart. For some examples of roles that might vary from LEA to LEA, you can visit PDE SAS and look at the teaching professionals with unique roles and functions. Some roles there are very specifically teachers. Some roles might be a little bit more ambiguous depending on how your LEA embodies those roles. What has evolved with non-teaching professional effectiveness, rubrics for those CSPG defined specialists have been finalized. Supervisors, again, not principals, those supervisors who have corresponding CSPGs, who are included as non-teaching professionals, have guiding questions and examples. They do not have specific rubrics, but they do have guiding questions and examples. And the staff members, who are those instructionally certified personnel, but they provide no direct instruction, to evaluate them, you would use the rubric that corresponds to their area of instructional certification. However, in many cases, it might be the Danielson rubric, the framework for teaching, that would be used. And there are some slight differences to the non-teaching professional summative evaluation form, which is 83-3. On the 83-3, the domain names are different for non-teaching professionals. But there are 4 domains, and in the Educator Effectiveness Manual, there's a crosswalk between both the framework for teaching domains and the non-teaching professional domains. So just be aware that there would be some slight translation required for instruction certified staff who provide no direct instruction when it comes to filling out their summative evaluation form. The last point about non-teaching professionals is training that DCIU will be providing. In essence, the process for evaluating non-teaching professionals is the same as with teacher effectiveness, using a rubric in an observation and having those conversations. If you have already gone through non-teaching professional effectiveness training, you do not need to complete it again. If you have gone through Danielson training, that would be the 2-day training that DCIU has offered in the past on many occasions, that essentially gives you the idea of what the process is. However, there will be an additional component that will look at the specific rubrics, guiding questions and examples for the supervisors, and rubrics for the CSPG defined specialists. That would be the only differentiation. But DCIU will also be offering non-teaching professional effectiveness trainings in the fall as well. Thank you for viewing this presentation, and as always, DCIU staff will keep you informed as we have new updates.